What is up, friends? Good Monday morning to you. Hope you're doing well this morning. We are continuing on with another Bible study. We are still in the book of Judges, and we've been talking about Samson for the past few days, if you've been with us, and that's been really good. Sorry I wasn't on Friday. We had to travel down to, Missouri to get everything ready that we needed to get ready down there, or get some things ready we need to get ready down there. So I had to miss Fridays, but I am back and we are rocking this morning. Judges chapter 16. We're still in Samson's life, and you've been waiting. I know you have. You've been waiting all these days for Delilah, right? Yes, my dog's namesake is in today's Bible study, and yeah, I do. I have a little dog. She's about the ugliest thing you've ever seen. Not too smart either, but we love her anyways, and her name is Delilah. And yes, we did name her after this Delilah. We did that. When we get pets, when Miss Henry and I get pets, we name them after biblical nemesis. We do that because we knew that we were never going to use those names for children's names, and so they were always safe. We could pick the bad guys of the Bible, they could be our pets. We could pick the good guys of the Bible, and they could be our children. That was kind of the method to our madness back in the day. Okay, now, if you're with me, if you've been watching these, if you've been a part of these, you know this. If not, I'm going to catch you up to speed. So Samson is a guy who is supposed to be a judge of Israel, and he is supposed to live a life set apart for God's purposes. Really, that's the point here. God tells Samson's mom from the very earliest moments, like, you're going to have a son. It's really important that you don't drink. It's really important that you keep yourself ritually clean, because your son is going to be a Nazirite from birth. Now, Nazirite has a couple of meanings. The first meaning is set apart. The word Nazirite means to be set apart. And so from birth, for the duration of his life, your son is going to be set apart for something special. It also means that he's going to be a person who takes what's called a Nazirite vow. Now, a Nazirite vow was usually taken by a person in the Old Testament when they wanted to set apart a specific time period of their life. But for Samson, he's a Nazirite for his entire life. So never shall his hair be cut. Never shall he drink alcohol. Never shall he go near a dead body. And that's just kind of the laws of Samson's life, right? Of course, Samson doesn't do a good job of keeping those laws. We very quickly see that he kills a lion, causes a dead body. He doesn't tell anybody. He doesn't get himself ritually cleansed from that. He does it out of self-defense. No shame in that game. But the fact that he didn't tell anybody and get cleansed, that's a problem. He then revisits that dead carcass. There's a beehive that took up ownership of that body. He takes the honey out, eats some, feeds some to his mom and dad without them knowing where it came from. Doesn't tell anybody. Once again, that dead body thing is there. He also marries a young girl, a young girl who's not of his nation, and he has his wedding at a vineyard and, quote, throws a party like the guys used to throw. In other words, alcohol, right? And so he does not honor God's wishes for his life. Not that this is a text that proves the forever abstention of alcohol for all people for all time, but in Samson's life, it was a no-no for the vow he had taken. And so he just causes bad thing after bad thing after bad thing. Death, chaos, revenge is all encompassing his life, because his life is a life of addiction in every single area. That's really what we see. We're going to find out today that he's not just addicted to chaos. He's also maybe addicted to women. This is what we find. Samson. We're in the book of Judges, chapter 16. Going to begin reading at verse 1. It says, Samson went to Gaza, and there he saw a prostitute, and he went into her. The Gazites were told, Samson has come here, and they surrounded the place, and they set an ambush for him all night at the gate of that city. They kept quiet all night, saying, let us wait till the light of the morning, then we will kill him. But Samson lay till midnight, and at midnight he arose, and he took hold of the doors of the gate of the city and of the two posts, and he pulled them up, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of the hill that is in front of Hebron. Okay, so here's basically what happened, right? Samson, this thing that Samson moves, right? First of all, it's like an insult for him to do that. But second of all, it's incredibly heavy. You're talking hundreds of pounds of weight that he just picks up and he carries up this hill, and he moves it there in Hebron. You can see how his life is being protected because he does still have a purpose. Verse 4. After this, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, right? Here's another woman coming into his life whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, seduce him and see where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to humble him, and we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. In other words, here's what we want you to do. We want you to fool him. We want you to make him fall in love with you, to tell you his secrets, and to turn him over for us. This transactional relationship that she's about to build with him. So Delilah said, sounds like a good name for a dog, doesn't it? So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies and how you may be bound, that one could subdue you. And Samson said to her, if they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, then I shall become weak and like any other man. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now she had men lying in ambush in an inner chamber, and she said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he snapped the bowstrings as a thread of flax snaps when it touches the fire. So the secret of his strength was not known. So this is maybe the smartest thing Samson ever does. Okay, it's going to get a lot dumber, but the smartest thing that Samson ever does is he misleads her to begin with. He gives her this little test. Oh, you want to know the secret of my strength? This is the secret of my strength. And then he allows her to do it to him. So now he should know, right? Like you would think he would know, oh, this woman's trying to trap me. Verse 10, then Delilah said to Samson, behold, you've mocked me and told me lies. Please tell me how you might be bound. And he said to her, if they bind me with new ropes that have not been used, then I shall become weak and like any other man. So Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them, and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And the men lying in ambush were in an inner chamber, but he snapped the ropes off his arms like a thread. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Then Delilah said to Samson, until now you've mocked me and told me lies. Tell me how you might be bound. And he said to her, if you weave the 7 locks of my head with the web and fasten it tight with the pin, then I shall become weak and like any other man. So while he slept, Delilah took the 7 locks of his head and wove them into the web, and she made them tight with the pin, and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he awoke from his sleep and pulled away the pin and the loom and the web. And she said to him, how can you say... And so she did it again, like 3 times. Verse 15. She said to him, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You've mocked me these 3 times, and you've not told me where your great strength lies. Well, of course not. Why would I tell you? You would have to be dumb, right? Like, you're talking 13-year-old boy in love with the girl next door dumb, okay? And when she pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death. And he told her all his heart and said to her, a razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. When Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she could tell this is the truth. She sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up again, for he has told me all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hands, and she made him sleep on her knees. And she called a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and the strength left him. And she said, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as at other times and shake myself free. In other words, my strength is from me, not from God. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. That's the saddest verse in this whole thing. And the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles. And he ground at the mill in the prison. But the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. Samson is so far from God at this point in his life that he does not even know when God's power has finally left him. He just doesn't feel it anymore. Hope we never get there. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god and rejoice, and they said, "Our God has given Samson, our enemy, into our hand." And when the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, "Our God has given our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country, who has killed many of us." And when their hearts were merry, they said, "Call Samson, that he may entertain us." They want to mock him. They want to make a fool of him. So they called Samson out of the prison, and he entertained them. They made him stand between the pillars. And Samson said to the young man who held him by the hand, "Let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean against them." Now the house was full of men and women, and the lords of the Philistines were there, and on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women who looked on while Samson entertained. Then Samson called the Lord, and he said, "O Lord God, please remember me, and please strengthen me only this once. O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." And Samson grasped the 2 middle pillars on which the house rested, and he leaned his weight against them, his right hand on his one and his left hand on the other. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he bowed with all of his strength, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he had killed during his life. Then his brothers and all his family came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah his father. He had judged Israel 20 years. 20 years. Samson's ending. Man, every time I read it, it gets me, right? Because you have this guy who's supposed to be set apart for God's service, who does not live his life at all at all for what God would want for him to do, right? He doesn't live his life for God at all. He's just a fool in every sense of the way, right? To the point that he allows a woman who has been obviously manipulating him to actually find the key to his strength, and he finds himself bound. I mean, you have the strongest man who's like ever been in the world, and at the end of his life, he is beaten, he is mocked, his eyes have been spooned out, he's been tied down, he's bound to a mill, brought out before the crowd to be made fun of, right? That kills me. Yet at the same time, if we were studying Hebrews right now, Samson's name would come up in the book of Hebrews. He's mentioned one time in the New Testament, the book of Hebrews. And where he's mentioned is Hebrews 11. He's mentioned in Hebrews 11. Now, those of you who have been in the church for a while, who watch this video, you're going to recognize Hebrews 11 because many pastors have called Hebrews 11 the Hall of Faith. Samson is honored in the Hall of Faith. He's honored in the Hall of Faith not because of the culmination of his life's events, because his life was tragic disaster after tragic disaster. Samson's honored in the Hall of Faith because finally, at the end of his life, he realized where his strength came from. And he called out upon the one who gave him strength. And he finally aligned his mission with the mission of the one who sent him. And in that moment, for the last couple minutes of Samson's life, he found true faith. He found it. And while Samson's life crushes me to read it, it really does. It crushes me every time I read it because I just see so much disaster for a life that had such great potential. That gives me so much hope, right? The verses in this narrative, like the verse that crushes me, okay? The verse that crushes me is Judges 16:20. She said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." And he awoke from his sleep and said, "I will go out as at other times and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him. That's verse 20. But by the time you get to verse 22, God's giving you hope again. But the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. In other words, it really doesn't matter how low of a state you find yourself in. You can proclaim your faith in God. You can give your life to him. And your entire situation can change. Your eternity can change. You can transition from an enemy of God to a hero in faith in the last 2 minutes of your life if you just give your life to God. That's huge, friends. Thanks for watching today. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you have questions or comments, you can leave those in the comments section. Of course, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the video. Click that bell icon. You'll receive notifications when we go live. And last but not least, if you would just share this video with one friend who you think would love it, I would greatly appreciate it.